welcome in to a playoff edition Monday Huddle. Bruce Hooley here, along with Lyle Sunny Folks. Welcome to the Press Pros Monday Huddle. We'll be joined by Coldwater coach Chip Otten here about 10 minutes or so. We're glad to have you with us, whether you're watching live on our social channels or on the replay. The high school football season is in the books regular season-wise, but it's only two-thirds over because we have 5 weeks of playoffs. And we have a lot of teams that we cover in the Press Pros Magazine original coverage area and in our Central Ohio expanded coverage area that have designs on being at Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium for state football championship weekend, the first weekend in December. Welcome in, Mr. Folks, and you got to cover the game of the year in the MAC. Marion local Coldwater, which did not turn out to be what we thought it would, in part because Marcel Blasingame didn't play. But I don't know if Marcel Blasingame makes 35 points difference in that game.
Well, Marion Local put on a show the other night. It's just how strong they are, how big, how good, how balanced they are offensively and defensively. They came out and really did a superb job and put a lot of pressure. Those 4 linebackers that Chip Otten will talk about here when he comes on a little bit did a great job of putting pressure on a quarterback playing his second game, back there. And you're talking about Braylon Harleman, who had to take over for Marcel Blasingame when he got hurt in the Versailles game. Played very admirably in that game, couple touchdowns throwing, couple on the ground, and started off very good on their first possession. Had a couple of big gains, but Marion makes adjustments on the fly so well, and they took that away very quickly, and it became a punting game pretty much for Coldwater after that, and Marion didn't miss many opportunities when they got their hands on the ball. Fantastic ground game between Darren Meyer, who I think had 80 yards, and Kyle Otte, who had 164 yards. Darren Meyer had 80 yards and 4 touchdowns rushing. Yeah. Kyle Otte had 164 yards and 1 touchdown, and they just put on a show. Whether it's execution on offense, they're just very precise. And they were as sharp the other night as I had seen them all year. It's the 5th time I'd seen them. And I can truthfully say to anybody who's sitting and watching tonight and thinking about, well, we might be playing them coming up in the playoffs, Marion is the one team this year, again, that every time I've seen them, they have been exponentially better than they were the time before. And that's not good news for Division VI opponents. I'm sure there's somebody out there who can make the same kind of claim, and that's good because that's why we play the games. But this is a very stout Marion defense, as Chip said in our game story the other night.
Well, as good as we know that St. Edward's is attempting to defend its Division I state championship, and as good as we know that Akron-Hoban appears to be, and Massillon-Washington appears to be, are in Division II, Hoban and Washington is the only team that's beaten St. Ed's, and St. Ed's beat Moeller, the team that was number 1 in Division I. Nevertheless, all that aside, the division that everybody has known since the start of the year was absolutely positively loaded was Division VI, because Marion, the defending Division VII champion, moved up to Division VI. Kirtland, which has not lost a regular season game in forever, their only loss was to Versailles in like the last 4 years or 5 years. Versailles beat them last year in the Division V state championship game. Kirtland moved down from Division V to Division VI, and Cary stayed right where it was, and Cary beat Coldwater in the Division VI state championship game last year. So you have the defending D6 champion Cary. You have the reigning D5 runner-up Kirtland, and a team that's won multiple state titles. It's the Marion Local of Northeast Ohio, if you will. And you have Marion, the all-time record holder, which it set that record last year, broke a tie with St. Ignatius with its 12th state title. So we've known all year that Division VI is loaded, and we don't know how it's going to shake out. But Marion certainly does not look like it's has to be envious of anything that Kirtland and Cary are doing, even though we're not as keenly familiar with those two teams and what they possess as we are with what Marion possesses.
Well, and the other thing, I think, if you look at Marion, and I must have answered this 6 times between yesterday and today, because everybody who read the site saw that I was there and wrote the story about the game with Coldwater, is asked about how this team compares to other Marion teams in the past.
Mm-hmm.
What I would say, and I said this 2 or 3 times today. If there's anything that makes this Marion team possibly more dangerous, it's not an individual player. It's not a quarterback, because you can't get much better than what Adam Berkey and Nate Bruns were when they were at their height. It's not a running back necessarily, because they've had J.C. Gettamillers and they've had Hunter Welkies and players like that. I think the thing that makes them all the more dangerous this year is the fact that I think they know that Carey and Kirtland are out there, as well as Versailles in Division 6. They love that kind of challenge. They back down from nobody, and they really love that type of competitive challenge that I think they sense that's out there for them. Now, they won't get that in the region, but when you get out there in a state semifinal game or a final game, and they get to prepare for somebody like that, and they're not afraid of losing. You know, they play the game for the competition. It isn't just how many more can we add on to 12. They want that kind of challenge. I know that makes Tim Goodwin salivate, as it did Chip Otten and coaches like that out of the MAC, Todd Schulte, Tim Beckman, all the way back to those great Versailles teams that Al Hetrick had. All those coaches. Garen Stokes, for the 2 titles he won in 14 and 16 or 17, whatever year it was, at Minster. That's why he's having the success he's having now in the OCC. He likes that kind of challenge. Yeah, he poor mouths a lot and downplays what he is and what he isn't. But, you know, all those guys bring it on. And that's what I think makes this Marion team better than many of the Marion teams I've seen in the past.
Mr. Folks comes to us tonight, courtesy of our friends at Skynet Internet Services in Piqua, Ohio. He no longer has the wonky broadband service at home. Sketchy broadband service. He has dependable Skynet Internet service, which he is about to tell you about its many wonders so that you can get it for your own home.
That all starts right here in downtown Piqua. Call 773-0998 and talk to Craig Grissom about Skynet Rural Internet Service in West Central Ohio, serving Miami, Shelby, Dark, Preble, Logan, Clark, Champaign, Auglaize, and Mercer County. And if you're out in the dark internet-wise, like I've been for the last 15 years, one call to them and they can hook you up either by satellite or by cell phone. So give them a call. Again, they are our source. And if you've watched us over the last couple of years, you've seen me drop out of sight during the Monday Huddle show. That's the reason. Bandwidth was the problem. They took care of all that. And we're sitting here in their studio tonight in downtown Piqua. So give them a call at 773-0998. Craig Grissom will answer the phone and help you personally. They'll see to it. They're good people. They're good business people as well. And they have a great service.
Okay, so here we go with how this is going to break down in the playoffs. We have this Friday and next Friday, the first 2 weeks of the high school football playoff season. All games are on Friday night. This, according to Tim Streed, the OHSAA public relations guy, solid guy. Thank you, Tim, for returning a text on Sunday from me. Sorry to bother you on it wasn't a day off because you guys were putting the playoffs together. But nevertheless, I do appreciate Tim getting back to us quickly on Sunday with the schedule. So first 2 weeks, everybody on Friday night. Then after that, divisions 1, 2, 3, and 5. 1, 2, 3, and 5 will play on Friday nights. Divisions 4, 6, and 7 will play on Saturday nights. So Piqua, Troy, Sydney, you're playing on Friday night all the way. Tip, you're playing on Friday night all the way. And in Division 5, of course, that is Coldwater and Milton Union. You're playing on Friday night all the way. In Division 4, 6, and 7, so pretty much the rest of the MAC, other than Coldwater, is playing on Saturday night once we get to week 3 of the playoffs, which would be the regional semifinals. We have a Facebook message from Keith Brooks. He says, what happened to my Cardinals? I assume he's asking what happened to his New Bremen Cardinals. They got upset at Delphus, which tells us that Chris Schmidt was not kidding when he gave big ups to the Delphus coaching staff and being worried about taking New Bremen up there in the final regular season game.
If it had been Shakespeare, Keith, he would have said, beware the Ides of March. And that's pretty much what Chris said the other night, 2 weeks ago. He said, as long as Todd Schulte is the Delphus St. John, I'll never feel comfortable about going up there with something on the line for us or them and playing them, because that's how much respect I have for them and his ability as a head coach to prepare and gets his kids ready to play, and they compete. And he's right. I've seen them play several times against teams that are much bigger, much better, faster, everything, and they always compete. So, and I don't know how much David Holman really played the other night too, because I had heard that they tried to limit his time in the game just to, I don't know if he was nicked up a little bit, but certainly going into the playoffs, they were trying maybe to protect him a little bit. I don't know the specifics of that.
I think if he was Shakespeare, he would have said, "Et tu, Blue Jays." That's what he would have said.
No, I'm pretty sure he would have said, and he did say, "Beware the Ides of March."
Oh, wow. See how
we get everything on this show.
See how we class up the joint around here, folks, with a little Billy Shakespeare. All right, let's go through our playoff pairings here. We have Hillsboro against Tip. That's a 3-14 game, Division III, Region 12. We have Chip Otten coming up. They will play host to North Union. Man, it's tough when you get a 7-3 team in the first round of the playoffs and you're the 4 seed. Coldwater not getting any favors from Bell Fountain, which was their best non-league win, and Bell Fountain lost at London, so that hurt Coldwater. They plummeted from 2 to 4. I don't think that was losing to Marion Local. That was Bell Fountain losing to London. We have Milton Union. It jumped up to the 2nd seed in Division 5, Region 20. They'll play host to Carlisle. It's a 4-6 team. Let's run through the MAC. Anna is at Marion. Sorry about it, Rockets. National Trail is at Versailles. It's a 13-4 game. We have Tri-Village, which is not a MAC team, but Reed Ware and Tri-Village, the 3rd seed in Region 24. They play host to Deer Park. And then in Division 7, Region 28, New Bremen is the 5 seed. They'll play host to 12 Cedarville. Fort Loramie, the number 2 seed, they have St. Henry, which got a win on Friday night to get to 2-8 and win its way into the playoffs. And Minster, number 6 against 11 Fort Recovery. Minster won that game by about 3 touchdowns in the regular season, but you never know what will happen in the playoffs, Mr. Folks.
No, you don't. I've seen some odd things, over the years, 15 years of covering the football playoffs. But I'll say this: teams that take care of their business, that are as well prepared as Coldwater and Marion Local and New Bremen, and I think you can quickly add Minster to that. Piqua certainly that way. Nobody's better prepared than Tip City. You got to be impressed with the way Troy bounced back from 1-2, won 5 of their last 6 games to finish 7-3. So I think Troy Everhart's got them playing well down there. Teams that are prepared, unless there's somebody like Anderson that comes into Troy on Friday night and they're going to throw the ball 80% of the time. That's hard to defend at any level of football. Even the New York Football Giants step up on teams that throw the ball well and throw the ball often. So those teams that I just mentioned are going to be well prepared and ready. You don't get that many surprises, particularly in the first round of the playoffs, which we've made that argument and talked about that ad nauseum for the last couple of years.
Coach Otten is trying to connect. We're trying to troubleshoot his connection a little bit here, so hopefully we'll have Chip Otten joining us shortly, because, I wore my Coldwater orange for Chip, and you wore your Coldwater black for Chip. So we were trying to welcome him here with the approved school colors, but, he's a good man, and he is trying to connect, so he says he's not tech savvy. Neither are we, and we certainly understand connection issues, and we hope that we can get Chip on here as the show progresses. We did not cover Piqua and Troy's first-round playoff games. They wound up 6-7 in Division 2, Region 8. Piqua will open up against Stebbins, and that saves Bill Neese and his staff a scouting report, since they just
played him 2 weeks ago and beat him 35-14.
And Troy will play Cincinnati Anderson. That's a 7-10 game at Troy Memorial Stadium, and we think that is a contrast of styles, right? That's Troy likes to run it, and Anderson, you think, likes to toss it all over the place.
They're going to sling it. Now they're called the Raptors. They used to be the Redskins, and they got PC, and they can't be the Redskins anymore. And so somebody was offended. They're the Raptors now, and now the prehistoric people are offended. So.
All right. The prehistoric people are offended. All right. The prognosis on Marcel Blasingame, Coldwater quarterback, when he had surgery a week ago, was 3 to 4 weeks. Coldwater is taking on, as we said, North Union. They are the 4 seed in their region. Liberty Center is 10-0. They're the number 1. Bloomdale Elmwood is number 2. They're 9-1. Pemberville Eastwood unbeaten. They're number 3. If Coldwater defeats North Union at home, they will play the winner of Huron 8-2 and Milan Edison 6-4. You watched Coldwater on Friday night. I saw him come back and beat Versailles with Braylon Harlemert at quarterback. And from your game story, Sonny, it does not really sound like Coldwater got much of an opportunity or Braylon Harlemert got much of an opportunity to really run offense because of the dominance of Marion Local's linebacker.
They were exactly dominant, on both sides of the ball. And, Chip said they were bigger, faster, stronger, more aggressive. They were more of everything than what we were. And he wasn't making excuses. He said that as a compliment to how good Marion Local played the other night. And again, I can't emphasize enough. That's the 5th time I've seen them this year. And exponentially, every time I've seen them, they have done something significantly better than it was the time before. I was impressed the other night with the way their offensive line played. We talk about defense, and they had 7 shutouts this year.
Yeah.
Over good football teams. And the one team that they didn't shut out, Wapakoneta, they beat 21-7 on opening night. They finished 9-1 in a high seed in Division III. So, that was might as well have been a shutout. But I was impressed with their offensive line the other night. I thought they played with more execution, more precision, crispness. They were quicker. They were just everything, like Chip said the other night, more than what they were. That's a team that really believes in themselves. And again, I think the bigger the challenge, I think the better they like it.
Marion has given up exactly one touchdown the second half of the season. That was to Versailles in week 6. They have since shut out Fort Recovery, Anna, St. Henry, and Coldwater. Not super impressive when you look at Fort Recovery, Anna, and St. Henry's record. They have 9 wins between the 3 of them. But when you shut out 9-1 Coldwater and break a 24-game Coldwater home winning streak, that's pretty impressive. And they have seven shutouts on the season. They have allowed 30 points all season.
That's an all-time record. That is the all-time record for points allowed at Marion Local. And, they've had some great defensive teams there, especially in that early 2000 run where they had the Walters kids playing, and they had some Homans and all those familiar names that you equate with Marion football. This team broke the record for least points allowed in a season with 30. I think somebody said the previous record was either 34 or 36. That's getting it done, though.
Now I'm going to put this next Facebook comment on the screen, and you are going to not talk about this more than 30 seconds, okay? Because you and I have an off-air agreement that we're gonna address this as Dennis Sparky Parks is trying to entice us to go down a road we have resolved not to go down. He says, "Hi, Sonny and Bruce. Great to see you, Sonny, on Saturday at the Shoe. 448 teams make the OHSAA playoffs. 73 have non-winning records. 1-1-9 and 2-2-8. Is the playoffs becoming watered down?" We can dispense of that question with one word.
Yes. Yes. What I hate the most about this, and I can say this in 30 seconds, is obviously the standard of Ohio football is not what it used to be, nor does it matter to people what it used to be. What obviously matters now is we get as many people through the turnstiles as possible.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And Randy Luthman has a question. He says, "Good evening, gentlemen. What is your take on the OHSAA restructuring, forcing MAC schools to cannibalize each other out of the playoffs?" Well, now this is a somewhat foreign concept to me. I would think that they've always been, in a lot of them, collected in the same region. Sonny, what has changed that Randy's referring to?
It's always been that way with a tweak here and there. For years, Coldwater had their run of 4 straight titles in Division 5. Marion Local has gone back and forth between 6 and 7, back and forth for the last 6 or 7 years. They actually won it in 5 one time. They haven't had anyone, I think, in Division 4 recently. I think maybe Versailles was the last team in Division 4. They've never had a Division 3 team. So there's going to be a little cannibalization, as you say, regardless, because all those teams are so close to each other in terms of enrollment. And that's what it's based on. So give or take, you're not going to have too many years, I don't think, in the future like it was in, what was that, 15 where they won, or 14 where they won in Division 5, 6, and 7. Or one year, Marion won,
Minster
won in 6, and Fort Recovery won in 7. They won in 6, 5, 6, and 7. Or,
I think they've won 3 state titles twice. I want to
say it's been that way. It ain't going to. It just, things have to fall just right. But what do I think about the restructuring? I don't know that it's so much a restructuring, although people blamed the OHSA and thought, well, they don't want 3 MAC teams winning almost half of the state titles, so they manipulated it so that Coldwater and Marion Local were in the same division, had to play each other in the regional round of the tournament. I think that's almost inevitable that that's going to happen. As I said, it's going to get tweaked from year to year or every 2 years as enrollment goes up or down.
Well, I mean, we have I think a reasonable chance of 3 MAC teams in 3 different divisions reaching Canton. I would think if Coldwater gets Marcel Blasingame back, they're certainly a threat in Division 5, as is Milton Union. They're not in the MAC, but Milton Union is also a threat in Division 5. In Division 6, obviously Marion is right there. In Division 7, you've got New Bremen, and I think Fort Loramie's right
Fort
there.
Loramie is Fort Loramie's the team that a lot of people are overlooking because they're not in a league. They're an independent. And when you're not, and you don't have that league affiliation, and you're not talked about in the same breath with Coldwater and Marion Local or Versailles or Minster or New Bremen, you're a little bit of an outlier. But I'm telling you, that team is a quality football team, well coached, and they can play.
Yeah, and so, I don't know that anything has been done that's underhanded to keep 3 MAC teams from winning state championships.
No, I've heard that for 3 or 4 years, and I've never bought that. I've considered it, but I really don't believe it. I just think it's inevitable if it's based on enrollment.
Chip says that he is faced with a dilemma we've all been faced with before, and that is the dreaded spinning hourglass. So you know what the problem is here, Sonny? He does not have Skynet internet.
He doesn't have Skynet.
That's right. That's the problem. If Chip had Skynet, Chip would be right here with us as we promote. He would be, but Chip is an all-time great guy, and so we apologize to you Coldwater fans and MAC fans and Ohio football fans who tuned in to get Chip Otten's take. He said he is by himself tonight, no kids to help. I think it's an internet issue if he's getting the spinning hourglass.
Yeah, that is. That's bandwidth. I've been there, done that.
Yeah. So we appreciate you, Chip, and we'll get you on another week when the clouds aren't keeping you from connecting. So let's go through the Central Ohio picks because we also cover Central Ohio in the Ohio Capital Conference. We have Olentangy Orange, which got in as a 15 seed in Division 1 Region 2, and that's noteworthy because Orange will play Springfield, the 2nd seed, in the first round. That one will be, I presume, at Springfield, and that is Bryce Schondelmeyer, the former Arcanum quarterback. He is stepped in there. I can't remember the young man who quarterbacked Springfield last year, but he was a full ride football recruit. And Schondelmeyer showed up at Springfield, and the Wildcats have kept right on cooking. So they are number 2 in Division 1 Region 2. Dublin Jerome is the top seed in that region. And this is interesting. Jerome drew 16th seed at Olentangy in round 1. And 2 weeks ago, Olentangy beat Jerome at Olentangy in overtime. So can they do it again? Do they have their number? We'll find out. We have Delaware Hayes against Olentangy Berlin, and the best game that I see is 11th seeded Marysville at 6th seeded Dublin Kaufman. Garen Stokes, the former Minster coach, a 7-3 season, a division championship season, and as he said, he cares so much about that. I think he said as his wife's new haircut. Correct?
More or less.
More or less, yes.
Paraphrasing.
We'll see what Kaufman can do in the playoffs against Marysville, which was 10-0 at this time a year ago, and got all the way, I think, to the regional finals. So Marysville runs it, Kaufman runs it. That game should be pretty quick when they get together Friday night at Kaufman Stadium. What in the way of Reader Speaks comments do we have, Mr. Foltz? Anything you'd like to share?
I will in a moment, but first of all, I want to address a text I just got here from Randy, who I appreciate very much. And he said, what do you think are some of the area best matchups for week one? Read your column today about the playoffs, and the very thing that Sparky wanted to know about is it watered down, and we won't get into that, but I will share what I think are some of the best or more interesting week one matchups. I'll start with Tip City and Hillsboro, only because I continue to be amazed by Tip City's season at 9-1 when you have to replace 19 starters. Hillsboro is a team that I don't think they have played the kind of competition that Tip is. I'm not sure they're going to be as prepared like I know Tip will be, and they have lost 4 of their last 5, including losses to Jackson, Washington, Miami Trace, and Chillicothe. And only one of their wins this year came against a team with a winning record. Here's another team that I think is kind of interesting in the fact that National Trail, who for years and years was the doormat of the cross-county conference. I mean, that everybody wanted to schedule homecoming with National Trail because you wanted to go to the dance with a win in your pocket. And I think that'll be interesting this year to go down there and compare everybody believes, and they talk about the strength of the Western Ohio Athletic Conference as compared to what the CCC would be or used to be, because they've got Preble Shawnee, which is a good team, and Sonia has been a good team in that league, and National Trail had a record of 6-4 against their Versailles. I think that is interesting. The Anna Marion local game is going to be interesting because they played 3 weeks ago, and Marion local beat Anna 48-0 in that game. So the rematch. Here's one that if Northridge is ever going to prove to anybody that they're as good as I've said they are on their Friday night picks, they got their shot Friday night. They're 7-2 on the year. That's the Northridge Polar Bears of the Three Rivers Conference, and they play McNicholas out of the GCL, and I think it's the GCL, and they're 5-5. But that's one of those beware the Ides of March, games. But Northridge has the athletes to go out there and compete. Now, they lost miserably in a couple of big games this year. They didn't lose so badly score-wise to Riverside, but they should have won that game. And Milton Union just blew them out last week, 51-0. But they have the athletes to compete. If they're going to do it, they got to do it sometime. Here's their shot against a 5-5 team, a number 11 seed in McNicholas. Couple others here I'll go through very quickly. I mentioned Troy. Troy and Anderson kind of intrigues me because they have played before in this situation. Troy's going to run the ball, as you said. They've got those guys that have played so much better. Their line has played so much better over the last 5 or 6 weeks. They're not nearly the team that Pick will beat 59-0 back on week 2 or 3. Anderson's going to throw it 80 times, but they're only 5-5 this year. They've retooled a little bit, but still that's their offense, and that's their mode of operation. St. Henry and Loramie. St. Henry's a team that nobody could figure out this year how inexplicably you can go from a team that's 6-4 and 7-3 on a yearly basis, and suddenly you're 2-8. Well, I'll explain it this way: when you're a quarterback, you lose your starting quarterback in August when he decides not to play football. That's got a lot to do with it, and the fact that you play in the MAC and nobody. It's a feeding frenzy when you're not quite up to standard with your game, and you go out there on a Friday night against the teams in that league. So I think Loramie is a team, as I just said, that a lot of people view as an outlier because they don't have a league affiliation, but they have won 5 in a row since losing back to Newark Catholic on week 3 or 4. They've really put it together. They've played everybody they can. They've played Dunbar. They've played Eden up in Northwest Ohio. They have played Lucas, who was a state finalist 2 years ago against Marion Local. So they've come on quickly. New Bremen and Cedarville. I think New Bremen to Keith Brooks, is a decided favorite in that. Cedarville plays in the Ohio Heritage Conference. They don't play the kind of competition that the Cardinals play, and I think that makes them a favorite just about any time. North Union and Coldwater. It's going to be very interesting to see how Coldwater bounces back from that loss last week. Chip said to me in the post game, he said, it stings when you lose a game like this to your rival, and it hurts your feelings. And now we got to get back in that locker room and decide, what kind of football team we are and what time football team we're going to be over the next for as many weeks as we can continue to play. I would expect them to come out with a little bit of hop in their step and be ready to play and compete against North Union. Ansonia. So many people have written to us about the Friday night picks about Ansonia. Do we disrespect Ansonia because of the league that they're in? I'll tell you what they do and do it well. They play a simple form of football. They run the ball. They're very talented between the tackles. They block well. They play good, sound, fundamental football up there. And until they get into the kind of schedule that you see in Division 7 with Loramie and New Bremen in Region 28, I think they're going to continue to have some success. Another game that I think is interesting this Friday night, you're going to see the Minster Wildcats. I've told you about Brogan Steffi. They're 6-4. They throw the ball probably as much as what Anderson does down in Cincinnati. And they've got 4 or 5 young guys. These guys are all sophomores. Steffi, the quarterback's a sophomore. Cordonier, they're one of their best pass catchers, is a sophomore. Niemeyer is either a sophomore or a junior, their top receiver. So these guys are all young. They're going to be around for a couple of years. And boy, they really they're fun to watch because, they'll throw it over the top of defenses repeatedly. Steffi is a great thrower of the football. They're getting better every week. My only concern would be on nights when they don't throw it well, can they run well enough to pick up the slack? And their defense has yet to, I think, to come of age. They're a team that are still putting some pieces together. But those are some of the more interesting and I think matchups for this Friday night that we expect to see. Bruce, you're going to have that Minster game, and I'm going to be at Coldwater for them in North Union. So I think those two games are going to be we'll see very quickly how well Coldwater bounces back, what kind of team they are. As he said, that stings, hurts your pride a little bit.
Yeah, I'm looking down the road because you went through very comprehensively this first week. I've got my eye on some games down the road, and one of the games that jumps out at me when you have a 3 seed in Tri-Village and you have a 4 seed in Versailles, that one is a really good regional semi to me. Number 3 Tri-Village against number 4 Versailles, and people would say, well, Versailles plays a much tougher schedule. And typically I would say you're right, but when you look at Tri-Village, they're the only team that beat Ansonia. Ansonia's got 1 loss, and it was to Tri-Village. And so that'll be, to me, a very interesting game if those two happen. You look to a week 2 game. Speaking of Ansonia, they could very easily run into Springfield Catholic Central in the second week. Springfield Catholic Central was 6-0 and ranked in the top 10 in the state. And I got to believe they've had a key injury of some sort because they have lost 4 in a row. And that screams to me that they lost somebody who was really, really consequential to them. Maybe not, but that's what it seems like to me. Also, just for selfish reasons, my West Liberty Salem Tigers are unfortunately seeded 8th in Division 6, Region 24, which means if they beat Triad, congratulations, come on down. You get to play Marion Local in week 2. So that one will be interesting to me. And, we've got some games. I'll be curious to know, can Minster beat Fort Recovery a second time? They handled them pretty well the first time. And you're looking at a second round game between New Bremen and Riverside. If New Bremen and Riverside both win, Riverside got its feelings hurt pretty significantly by Milton Union, but now they're back down punching at their own weight against New Bremen. That'll be an interesting second round game if it's number 4 Riverside against number 5 New Bremen. So the playoffs will have some interesting games here in week 1, not typically with your top seeds, but it'll be interesting just in those middle seedings. And then you get into week 2, and then you really start to have some games where upsets can happen. And, you have to be wary every single week, because if you're not, you could find yourself on the outside looking in. What I'd like to know from our people watching the show, if they know, and maybe you know, Sonny, has it been determined yet which region matches up with which region? Because I'm particularly interested in Division 6.
Yeah, I'm not
To
sure.
win the title, is Marion going to have to beat Cary and Kirtland, or are Cary and Kirtland going to play in the semis, and then that team advances to Canton to play, presumably, Marion if Marion advances? I would like to know how those regional semi matchups are ordered. Are they geographical, or are they on a rotating basis? And maybe we have somebody who knows that, who could let us know.
I just think they throw some papers down from the top of the steps, and however they land at the bottom, that's how they go. I just got a text from somebody in Middletown that said, "You said that Division 6 was loaded this year," and I think they are. But this person says, "Hey, look at Division 2 in Region 8."
Okay.
That's got Winton Woods is the defending state champion, all the way down through Piqua and Troy. I think Kings is in that. That's a loaded region as well in Division 2. They're in Division 8. Piqua and Troy will have to get through that if they're going to go anywhere and do anything.
Yeah, Winton Woods on top. They don't have Tyreek Spikes, but they've got an Ohio State commit in the defensive backfield, Xenia. We know how good Xenia is.
We do.
Trayshawn Sanders. Edgewood is number 3. They're 9-1. Kings is 9-1. They're the 4th seed. Then you get Withrow 7-3, and Piqua 8-2, and Troy 7-3. Now I saw Troy when they played Piqua, and that was just a walkover. So I don't know. Kudos to Troy's first-year coach, who has obviously gotten Troy really playing a lot better, because they were not competitive against Piqua, and that was a humbling loss in a rivalry game. And for Troy to bounce back and to lose only one game after that is a pretty impressive bounce back by Troy. So your texter is not incorrect, at least record-wise. Division 2, Region 8 does look pretty good. Let's go to some of our text messages. Here's Dennis again. He says, Newcomerstown made the playoffs with a record of 8-2 after being 1-9. They play West Jeff, who will have a 2-hour bus ride on Friday night. Fair. Yeah, I think if you have a higher seed and you get a home game, you can't gripe about if you're a seed in the double digits, you can't gripe about how far you have to drive to go play a playoff game. That's just my personal opinion.
Play better or play in a better league.
Yeah, and then Randy wants to know, is the OHSAA having issues getting and keeping refereeing officials in all sports? If so, why is that? I haven't done a story on it, but the general consensus is yes, they are having a problem, and there are many reasons given. The OHSAA people will tell you that is because officials receive too much criticism from the stands, from parents, not so much from coaches, but from parents. And I don't know if that applies as much to football as it does to basketball. But I think you all know this is my topic that I'm not allowed to go off on a tangent on. I believe that basketball in the tournament is really not officiated. They're just out there babysitting. They're letting players getting away with everything, and it ceases to be basketball. And that leads to
and Randy, I think you got to consider now with inflation at 9%, 10%, or whatever it is, although it's much, much, much worse in Europe, as we know. So we really don't know how good we've got it here. But with inflation and the cost of things, really to show up and do a game for drive 2 hours and get paid $55, $65, $75, to officiate a high school football game, I don't know if I would do it for that. So I think that's got to be considered, that if prices of fuel and travel and everything are up, then you've got to consider the price of doing business when you pay your officials. As Bruce said, certainly it is an issue that the abuse they take out of the stands anymore, because more and more schools now don't have uniformed security people on the premises, in gymnasiums, particularly for basketball games. I can't remember last year. Maybe 3 or 4 schools that regularly had deputy sheriffs or somebody on just for crowd control. But a lot of officials that will tell you privately, they wouldn't say it publicly, but they don't really enjoy being in that kind of environment anymore, where you don't know what you don't know about who's in the stands.
Well, we had a situation last year, I think, where there was a football officiating crew that got locked in their locker room by some fans who were upset and were just going to mess with them and not let them out. So
whacking kids.
Yeah. So that's not a normal everyday occurrence, but it points up that there is a problem sometimes with fans and how
But
they
you know,
relate.
another thing, Randy, and I've said this for years because I'm an ex-official. Uh, I recognized years ago that the day is going to come when the veteran guys who actually played in high school, some of them played in college, who knew the game by instinct about when to blow the whistle and when not to, and uh, they weren't so much purely by the rule book. If somebody there is a push in the back 50 yards away from the running back or the play that's happening on the opposite side of the field, you don't necessarily call that a block in the back or clipping or something like that. They know how the instincts for how the game should be officiated. Those guys are retiring and moving on now. The new guys that are coming in, a lot of them have never played the sport, and they take it up because they want to. They're told it's a good way to make some extra money. It's a good way to stay in shape. It's a good way to contribute to the schools and the kids. There's a lot of reasons that are pandered out there as to why you should be an official. But the number one reason why you should be official is you have played the game. You understand the emotions of the game, the tempos of the game, all the nuances of what goes into the competitive environment of competition. You need to understand that. And if you go out there and never have had a competitive moment in your life, I'm not sure that you're going to have a very happy or successful tenure as an official. And
Uh,
those guys are few and far between anymore.
Charles says West Jefferson is weak this year. Well, they lost their quarterback last year. I know that they lost. He graduated. The
They're a
coach's son,
500 team this year, Charles. That's
500
true.
team. And Brandon says Pee Wee officials getting paid $75 per game. They work 4 to 6 games in a day. Brandon, they are working for their money. And you know what? If they're going to make, I'll do your math. If they're going to make $450 doing that, running around out there all day with parents screaming at them and kids big timing them, they earn their money. They earn their money, and they're performing a valuable service for kids to have organized sports and officiating. So I'm a firm believer in capitalism. If you're not holding a gun on somebody, you're not overpaid. So if the officials are getting $75 a game to work a Pee Wee game, more power to them, because I wouldn't want to run around out there with Pee Wee kids. And, I've seen many Pee Wee games. Trust me, my girls all started at that level. And I would not want to have to make the value judgment on, do you call every traveling and every jump ball in a girls' basketball game? Because if you want to, you're going to be blowing your whistle every 5 seconds. So I tend to look at they're doing something I wouldn't want to do.
I typically in a Pee Wee game, you're not driving 2 hours to get there, particularly if it's a play. There are no, as far as I know about playoffs, there are no such stipulations about officials from other parts of the state that they try to mix things up for the fact of familiarity in the playoffs with the high school teams. But he's right. You earn your money, but if you do have to drive for high school, and it's a 2 hour trip to get there, if you're driving from Columbus, Cincinnati, or Toledo, or someplace like that, it's nuts to spend $75 to make $75.
All right. Anything from the Reader Speaks, or shall we bid our live audience adieu for the evening?
We will bid them adieu. I have one comment here from Tom in Columbus, who said that he certainly appreciates the coverage of OCC. And he said, I've read Steve Blackledge for years. There's nobody better than Blackie. And he says, you guys do a great job of having him out there, and really appreciated the UA game the other night. With who did they play? Dublin Kaufman?
UA played, no, they played Davidson.
Yeah, that's right. They played Davidson. And he said, you guys do a superb job. And he said compliments to him and John Hulkenberg, who shot that game for us the other night at Upper Arlington. Well, Tom, we appreciate that. And I know you and your brother Tim read us all the time, because I see your posts on Facebook and get your texts, and we certainly appreciate your support.
Yeah, and speaking of Upper Arlington, that is a team that we have not talked a lot about. We were certainly talking a lot about the Golden Bears a year ago at this time, because they had Simon Monin at quarterback and Sam Cannon at wide receiver, Carson Graysock at running back, and they were 10-0. And they pushed eventual state champion Lakewood St. Edward as much as any team in the playoffs did. And they lost 19 starters and came back this year and went 8-2. And that is a big time tribute to Justin Buttermore and the program he's built at Upper Arlington. I have a friend whose son is in the 8th grade, and he will be an outstanding Golden Bear football player someday. And I can flat tell you the amount of buy-in that the Upper Arlington Golden Bear football program gets from its youth coaches, its 2 junior high programs, its flag football programs. It is, Justin Buttermore has a tiered program all the way down to the youth level, and he's got a lot of guys who played for Arlington and played college football who coach those kids. They really have a culture of winning at Upper Arlington. They've won state championships in multiple sports for years, and obviously Marv Moorhead was an all-time great coach there. That's who the stadium is named after at Upper Arlington. And Justin Buttermore is doing a great job with UA, and they are the 2nd seed in Division I, Region 3. They'll open up against Reynoldsburg, and Reynoldsburg caught fire late in the year. I think they won their last 3 or 4. They were winless midway through the season with their coach Mark Fillmore, who played college football at Northwestern.
Northwestern, yes, sir.
So
and went to Reynoldsburg.
Yeah, so that's going to be an interesting watch, because UA is in the same region as Gahanna Lincoln, which looks to be the class of Central Ohio football this year. But Justin Buttermore and the UA Golden Bears, kudos. They also tied Kaufman for that division championship. I believe it's the OCC Central. And no one saw that coming after UA suffered such massive graduation losses.
Well, we certainly appreciate the support and the people who write in and tell us that they like the work that we do and appreciate being out there. And I had several people the other night at Coldwater stopped in that I hadn't seen before that said we're new readers, just discovered it. So as many years as we've been around here, we're still picking up new people around from the area schools that are seeing us for the first time. And we certainly appreciate the kind words and the appreciation. And that goes, I'm sure, for Blackie and John Hulkenberg and the gentleman there on my left with the orange sweater that he didn't get to fully get credit for tonight.
No, I didn't. I'll have to break this out when we get Chip some Skynet internet services and get him locked and loaded. Make sure you're watching The Lowdown on a semi-daily basis. The Lowdown is sponsored by our friends at Lehman's Hardware and Old Time General Store. They are the exclusive sponsors of The Lowdown, and you can win a $50 gift card to Lehman's by sending us an email, pressproscontest@gmail.com. You can get 10% off any order at Lehman's by using the promo code PressPros10. Lehman's is 4 miles off Route 30 on your way to the State Football Championship weekend at Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium. It's well worth your time. They have a delicious cafe inside. They have fudge and ice cream. And I know you're saying hardware store. Why would I stop at a hardware store? Well, it's not a hardware store. It's an everything store, kitchen store, dry goods. They have clothing. They have an antique collection. It really is. I know we say it all the time and people don't believe us. It is a one-of-a-kind experience. If you've never been to Lehman's, you got to see it to believe it. Trust me, take the Press Pros Lehman's Challenge. Stop in, and if you're disappointed in what you find, let me know, because you'll be the first. You'll be the first.
One last text question here. How long will we continue to do Friday night picks? Yes, we do that through 13 weeks through the regional finals. We don't do it for the state semis, and we don't do it for the finals in Canton. But through the regional finals, we will continue to do.
That's 14 weeks. That's 14 weeks through the regional finals.
We do it through the regional finals.
Okay, very good. And don't forget, besides high school sports, we also cover University of Dayton football, University of Dayton basketball, Ohio State baseball, football, and basketball. And we have a little surprise for you coming this week. As Thursday night, Mr. Folks and I will be at the Covelli Center at Ohio State for the Buckeye wrestling team's wrestle-offs. So we are looking forward to taking a look at the Buckeyes, because the birdies tell me that the Ohio State wrestling squad is a Big Ten and national championship contender this year.
We don't have to wear singlets, do we?
We do not have to wear singlets, thankfully, because I don't have my singlet, and I don't think you do either. And I think that would be a very efficient way for us to have our credentials revoked.
In my case, it would be more like a doublet or a triplet.
And on that happy note,
right.
And that
We're out of here.
uncomfortable visual image, we will bid you all a fond adieu. Thanks for watching the huddle. Thanks for watching it on replay. Tell your friends about it. Thank our sponsors when you're out and about. And we will see you out at the games this weekend.
Make sure you tell us hello. We'd love to see you.